to let you all down. I had to let down my partner in crime, my co-host, Mr. Travis Croft. How are you, sir? How are you?
I am fine and dandy.
Good.
Intact. That's a plus in this
You
day
are
and age.
whole.
I haven't tried to leap any cliffs this week in my car. But that said, we were comparing notes that the last time we attempted to do this show live together in the same room, I drove up the very road that George had such trouble with this most recent week, and in a biblical downpour. Like, I am not kidding. It was biblical.
It was genuinely, ladies and gentlemen, it was not just like, oh, it's raining heavy. It was raining really heavy. It was bouncing a good foot back up off the ground. The wind, my God, that was just coming through. Like, God literally just went, you know what? About 12 years ago, I put fires in King Lake. Let's try flooding it and just blowing it away this time.
It's like in SimCity where you're like, what does the fire button do? What does the flood button do? What does the Godzilla button do?
In maybe next year we'll just have a UFO strike here.
It's like a locust or something. But that was the last time I watched. I tried to do this live, and I found that one of the most terrifying drives of my life. Mainly because there are fairly steep drop-offs on the side of the road. So
yes,
you have my infinite sympathy, quite aside from where you ended up, just from the abject terror of that situation. It goes to show it can happen to anyone.
Absolutely. Even a trained professional driver such as myself.
Right. I mean, someone who grew up driving, I guess, in roads are snowy in the UK, I guess, to some degree.
No, I didn't learn to drive until I was over here.
That's right. There you go.
Yeah.
That's half of my worry about driving in North America is driving on snowy roads. But we are very glad to see that you survived. That seems a very crass way to put it.
I feel like that's just kind of the borderline. Like, a lot of people have been coming out and saying, "Oh, you're so lucky. You should go out and buy a lottery ticket." It's like, well, no. I feel like the luck thing is like bad luck, car accident, good luck, survived. That probably balances out. It still feels cheap, but I guess that balances out, because otherwise it would have been far worse if I'd been really unlucky.
It is a very Australian thing to say. Mate, you should have bought yourself a lotto ticket, eh?
It's true.
But it's, I see in the States, like I have, what's it on YouTube? I think it's on YouTube or maybe on my podcast. I get ads pop up telling it's my podcast. Telling people, reminding them to wear seatbelts. I'm like, I'm sorry, are you guys still in that space in the United States where you have to remind people to wear seatbelts?
Seatbelts are lame, Travis, and only cool kids ride the line, shall we say.
So this is what I'm going to say here is wear seatbelt, kids. You never know when the worst could happen. And
100%.
A very mundane incident that occurred in an awkward spot. You could very easily find yourself in an awkward situation. So
absolutely,
we don't joke about road safety.
Right. But on the comical side of it, aside from being upside down, smoke from the airbags being deployed, bit of fire, bit of broken glass, and Shay kind of panicking beside me, the first thing that I noticed was that I had potato on my face. Because I was actually heading down to do a lovely Dungeons and Dragons themed meal with all my friends who play D&D, and of course that went flying everywhere, and the potatoes that I had parboiled had escaped and slapped me in the face. And I'm pretty sure at some point one of the fish that I was going to be frying up slapped me in the face as well. So I have officially been slapped in the face by a fish.
There you go. You got to have a sense of humor, I think.
Absolutely. It got me through the first couple of days for sure.
And I was actually in the neighborhood as well, which is kind of crazy. I was just down the road from where you were.
Well, that's because you are an aspiring star.
I did shoot a very, very short film that my co-host has had, the lucky co-host has had the privilege of seeing. So I'm sure when I find out what's going to go on with that being on display for people to see, I'll let you know. But it was quite fun. My co-host from king for a day. Leslie is very good with her lights and cameras, and she did a wonderful job. And of course, I was a talent as usual.
Of course. That's what you are. That is your descriptor.
My role in life is to be the talent. I was looking for that's it. I'm going to my trailer. My trailer being my Renault. But fortunately, Leslie is a director who knows how to control her talent and keep the talent happy.
Well, that's the important thing, honestly.
Speaking of happy, we have a joyous and uplifting film this week. Your listening pleasure this week's chain movie.
So the last time we reviewed or rewatched Jordan Peele's Us, which stars the wonderful and incredibly talented Lupita Nyong'o. So following on from that, I decided to go to 12 Years a Slave because I'd forgotten that I'd actually watched it, and I thought this was a good opportunity to see it. For those who don't know, let's try and keep this habit going because we did it last time. 12 Years a Slave is based on the true story of Solomon Northup, who was essentially kidnapped and sold into slavery in pre-Civil War United States. He was abducted, sold into slavery, and brutalized, and in so many disturbing ways he was kind of ripped apart to the point of he was told to go by a different name. He was whipped, he was brutalized, he was whipped and brutalized until he was submitted to stop saying that he was a free man, things like that. And this chronicles his 12 years going from that point of kidnapping through to his essential re-release from hell. It's what do you think of this movie, Jeff?
It is a very affecting movie. I mean, it's very effective in the sense that we really do get a sense of. I actually had to look up how to say his name because I was sure I was saying it wrong. Chiwetel Ejiofor, his character Solomon. You get a real feel for the terror and horror of his situation in the sense of, well, at least I did. I could really feel it, the idea of going from the fairly civilized and genteel life that he experienced in New York, I think he was based in. New York State, where with his family, his kids, almost idyllic. For maybe I did find myself kind of going, was it really that cool? Is it really that cool for black people in even in the North? In that period? I don't know. It's another story, I guess. But the film basically tells us it's a wonderful life he's got up there, pretty much, at least by 19th century African American standards. And he really, really slaps you around the face with the horrors that he endured by being kidnapped and basically enjoying life as a slave. And I mean, it's difficult to. I don't want to say that it would have been harder for him than other slaves, but it is a special kind of hell. So those people. This is a real story, by the way. This actually happened. It's based on a book by the guy it happened to. For those poor souls who went through that, to have a taste of what was available, and to have that brutally stripped away. And then it's not explained in the film whether Solomon was ever a slave.
No, it's not. And I wasn't sure about that. I'm presuming, just considering the way that his life is depicted in the opening of this movie, I'm presuming that he was a born and raised liberated African American. He did because it would be. That's an interesting story in its own right of someone who went from slavery to that level of acceptance in society. From what history has taught me and movies have shown me, that didn't really happen very much. Unless it was
I think there were people who bought their freedom or given their freedom. But I'm certainly in no place to
But I mean, like they go into the I think like a haberdasher or a general purpose store, and they're treated with a great amount of dignity and respect and things like that. It's like this guy must have come from a position of power and or money prior. There's nothing I know about it, so it's like okay, he's probably sitting pretty high on the echelon for the society's ladder by the looks of it.
And I think the other part of it is that he was very educated.
Yes.
Right. He seemed like a very educated man. And one has to wonder, I mean, we're making a lot of assumptions here, but one has to wonder whether or not somebody who was born into slavery would have ever had the opportunity to have that level of education.
Yeah.
And I feel like the answer to that probably is no, but I guess we don't know, I guess, whether he's ever been a slave or not. So to have had, we'll assume for the purposes of this, he wasn't. And to have had lived your entire life as a free man to be cast into slavery would have been, as I said, I think a special kind of hell. And the film pulls absolutely no punches about that. The other part, I guess the flip side of that is, of me saying it's very effective, is I think it does reek of being Oscar bait, though.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's very good in what it does, but in a large part of me, I kind of feel like it doesn't go far enough. I feel like it treads that line. It reaches that point of what I would kind of refer to as like the Requiem for a Dream line, where that is an incredible movie with fantastic performances and things like that. But you watch it, there is not a single person who can watch that for the first time and not be affected by it and think about it and kind of be haunted by it. This movie, it's affecting as you're watching it, but the fact that I forgot that I'd watched it, it's like, okay, I feel like this is a very important message. This is an important person. This is a valuable thing for cinema to adapt. Why did I not remember it? And rewatching it, it was like, okay, it kind of feels like Oscar baity, and it doesn't kind of do quite enough in certain areas. Like going back to that shop scene at the beginning, there's that bit of tension and brusqueness from the shop owner when the other black guy walks in, because he's surprised seeing Solomon walk through with his fine suit and his wife and all of that stuff. And Solomon kind of just looks at him and doesn't really consider him. That makes me think that Solomon has never been a slave before or indentured in any servitude of any kind of level. And then going to the end, you only get information about him building, going into being much more vocal and using his position to help slavery as an after effect. It's like he doesn't even consider it at the start of the movie. It's like, that's an interesting, poignant point, and there's story to be told there, I think. But I wonder if it kind of skirts on that thing of, oh, it's a black man with white privilege. We don't really want to tell that story now. We want to just tell, this very specific story. So it chooses the elements of the story it wants to tell, and it kind of feels a little cookie cutter in some ways. Like the three main white guys that he interacts with. You've got Benedict Cumberbatch's character, who is nice, but it's almost kind of an odd kind of, he's trying to do a bit of Stockholm symptoms, that he's nice, but everyone he knows that
it's kind of in this place of like, yeah, I know this system kind of sucks, but it is what it is.
Yeah, and he's not willing to do anything.
It's kind of like, yeah, he's like, oh well, it just is the way it is, and I will subvert the system by not being as big a prick as other people. Which, it is almost like they're talking a little bit about what do you call them? Your standard white people who make a noise about the fact that, oh, I donated to Black Lives Matter, or the people in get out. You know, I would have voted for Obama for a third term if I could.
Yeah.
You know, that sort of style of white person who thinks that kind of tokenism.
Yeah, that's enough.
That's all I can do. And by being a token, by that tokenism, I'm contributing to your cause. But you know, in the end, you're really just collaborating with the oppressors.
Yeah.
And then, in a way, that's kind of where Benedict Cumberbatch's character is. It's like, well, I treat you guys right, so I'm not as bad. I'm fighting against the system.
Yeah.
No.
And they do make a point of that, where he's saying, "Oh, he's a good man," so like he's still a slave owner, and it's like, yeah, that's absolutely fair point right there. That you, even though he, the ruler might be gentle, he's still subverting your free will, and he knows that it's bad, but he's not doing anything about it. And that kind of feels like, okay, here's one extreme, and then we get Michael Fassbender's Edwin Epps. And he is the kind of quintessential. He's the next step before you go into almost farcical levels of slave owner, like Leonardo DiCaprio's representation in Django Unchained. He's a cruel, horrible man. Him and his wife, brilliantly played by Sarah Paulson, they hate each other. They use that hatred and spew it onto the people that work for them, and the brutality that they get Michael Fassbender to deliver, particularly to Lupita Nyong'o, who is, again, on point in this movie.
She's astounding in this film. I mean, if this is a very early film for her as well. Like,
yeah.
I think this is maybe the film that really got her name out there, if I'm not mistaken. But wow, she's got a very difficult role to play in this film.
Yeah, and she doesn't even her character doesn't really say too much audibly. It's all in her silence. She is really good at using that silence and expressing every single feeling and emotion without saying a single word, because she knows.
This is her feature debut, by the way, people.
Feature debut. Amazing performance. And my God, talk about, okay, so this is your first film. We're going to have you raped. We're going to have you beaten. We're going to have you brutalized physically and psychologically. You are going up against some of the current big names in theatrical Hollywood of Michael Fassbender, and Benedict Cumberbatch is being produced by Brad Pitt and George Clooney. No stress. I mean, wow.
The little piece of trivia here is, before filming their more brutal scenes together, Lupita Nyong'o and Michael Fassbender, performed the ritual of making nice. According to Nyong'o, they wouldn't say anything to each other, just look in the eye and a grasping of hands. Our characters are in such opposition, but we as actors need each other in order to be able to go the distance. And yeah, like they hit that one out of the park. She hadn't done much at all before this, and she just found an insane talent ready for this role. And as you sort of said, there is a lot of talent on display in this film. In addition to those actors, you said it got people like Scoot McNairy, who will be a familiar face to quite a few people. He was in Dawn of Justice. Paul Giamatti's in there as well. Paul Dano, who will play the Joker. Sorry, the Joker, the Riddler.
The Riddler,
the new Batman movie. All the way through, there are sort of fairly familiar faces in here. I thought Brad Pitt's role stood out like dog's balls, though, frankly.
100% agree. And it was, it just smacked of like a type of kind of producer cameo that I don't know if we've seen in a long time. It's like, really, Brad, you're getting Brad Pitt to be a Canadian? And why? He's not exactly great with accents. Why didn't you get a Canadian? I don't understand why they did it, because it was not a huge role in the movie. It was a huge role in Solomon's life, because he is finally the one person that gets the ball rolling for his freedom, which is great. It's damning that it comes from someone who's not an American, but
But the line in the trivia section, he said Brad Pitt was criticized for casting himself in a brief heroic role. Pitt claimed that he did not insist on being cast in the part, and it was easier to secure funding for the picture if he was in it. That actually, I can kind of believe if you put Brad Pitt on the poster, which they
I
do
can believe that.
in certain markets.
Mm-hmm.
That you can say Brad Pitt's in your picture. I imagine you get extra money.
Yeah.
Though that said, it just didn't work for me in the sense that I didn't have a problem with any of those things. I wouldn't know what how different a Canadian might sound from an American in the 19th century. I doubt there'd be much difference, frankly, especially if he's from the border region. More to the fact that it was like, oh, it's Brad Pitt.
Yeah.
Brad Pitt. He's just so recognizable. He's like a huge megastar of an act, the biggest star in the movie by a stretch. And he's playing a 5-minute role, which just happens to be such a heroic role in the film. Like maybe what if he played one of the kidnappers at the start who was bamboozling Solomon into coming to New York and taking him south? That was a very small role.
Yeah.
And you had someone like Scoot McNairy playing or the other guy playing some guy. I'm sure they would have been lining up when you said, I've got Fassbender, Cumberbatch, and we're produced by Brad Pitt and Steve McQueen directing it. I'm sure pretty much anyone in Hollywood, I need you for 2 days.
Yeah.
I'm sure they're going to sign. If you had to have Brad Pitt in it, I don't think that was the role for him.
Yeah.
And while it doesn't detract from the film overall to me, it does pull you out of the picture.
Agreed.
Megastar. And
Agreed.
He looks like Brad Pitt. You need to bury someone like that into a film, really.
That's why I agree with your idea that, him being one of the kidnappers would have been perfect because he is such a likable guy. He's endearing, he's charming, he is beguiling, and that would fit that kidnapper role with that dark undertone as well. And it's just a little bit, but it's an inciting incident that would have been, I think that would have been smarter, but, it still did very, very well. Thankfully, it did very well. I kind of look at it. My big thing for it is I feel like this probably to get the story really right and to go as deep and as genuine as I kind of wish that it did. I think it needed to be a miniseries instead. They need a bit more time to invest in those things and just bring out those characters a little bit more because some of the characters do feel kind of rushed and it's like, okay, this is the next horrible stage. There was a little bit of kind of flick book of a man's life to it. It's like,
it's true. I mean, we've talked about it before. If you're going to make a great biopic, talked about Fassbender in the Steve Jobs film. They just picked 3 vignettes, important moments in his life, and let's tell the story about these 3 moments. You can't. Sometimes if you take on too broad a swathe of someone's life, you end up, as you know, just flashing past very important moments. You try to squeeze too much into 2.5 hours.
Yeah.
I should note, we've talked about this. It was brutal. You gave a great synopsis of what happens to Lupita Nyong'o's character is, and as you sort of said, Michael Fassbender's character is particularly brutal. However, I must say this is actually a reasonably good film to watch in the sense that it still manages to me to be fairly entertaining and engaging.
Yes, absolutely. And I think a huge portion of that goes on Chiwetel Ejiofor's shoulders. He is so good in this role. He is incredibly likable throughout the whole thing. He wears his emotion in his eyes, and the fact that you see him kind of holding back this rage so often and this wailing sorrow that he chastises another one of the slaves for. He delivered the performance of a lifetime.
And it's interesting. I think apparently he passed on this originally.
Oh, okay.
And they said, come on, man, this is going to be a performance of a lifetime. Just exactly what you just said. And I think he maybe was a little unlucky to land in a tough year when it comes. He got nominated for Best Actor this year, 2014. He lost to Matthew McConaughey for the Dallas Buyers Club, which Matthew McConaughey was very, very good in that.
Yeah, that's a tough one.
Leo DiCaprio was in Wolf of Wall Street that year, which was, again, very, very good. He was up also in there. You had Christian Bale for American Hustle, a film I hate. And Bruce Dern for Nebraska, a film I've never seen. And Michael Fassbender was up for Best Supporting Actor and didn't win it. He lost it to Dallas Buyers Club again, Jared Leto again, who was fucking brilliant in Dallas Buyers Club.
Yeah.
So, Lupita, of course, did win for Best Supporting Actress, which is at least some consolation. Steve McQueen lost to Alfonso Cuarón. I'm pronouncing it wrong. For Gravity.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I don't like Gravity, but we'll go into that some other time.
But I know people who don't like it mainly for scientific reasons. And they're like, that wouldn't actually happen in real life. They can't do that. The Neil deGrasse Tyson defense. I enjoyed it nonetheless. But so this did win Best Picture, though. So,
that's good.
That is a Best Supporting Actress and Best Writing Adapted Screenplay for John Ridley. So it's quality, and it reeks of quality. With the high profile prestige actors, and it looks good. I like the way it was shot. The way that it looks different when you're in the South. It's a bit like when you're in Mexico, everything has like a brown filter on it.
it's true.
So it looks good. You're right. You made a good point about Chiwetel Ejiofor. But I actually would just cringe at those moments where he couldn't contain himself anymore, and he would lash out. The moment where he lashed out, spoilers, he lashed out at Paul Dano and beat the shit out of him. On the one hand, was incredibly satisfying, but other times you're like, oh, he's gonna pay for that.
Yeah, I was. It was that wonderful position of feeling that gratification that yes, you are getting your licks in, good, but at the same time it's like you are fucking yourself over. Oh shit, that's not gonna go unrewarded. That's really bad. As a note on Paul Dano, he is great at being a cunt.
He really does. He was wonderfully awful in this, and I found myself going when he's cast as the Riddler, you're like, I don't really know who that is.
He's going to be good.
You look at his picture and you're like, oh yeah, he's been in stuff.
Yeah,
but I'm not really sure what.
He's going to be good.
You see him in this, you're like, oh no, he can play an arsehole.
And I would like to point out Steve McQueen, the director of this. He has done many short films. This is actually his third feature film behind 2011's Shame and 2008's Hunger. Wow.
He's a talent, that's for sure.
Yeah.
I'll be very curious. He's done a mini series this year, which I don't know if that's been released in Australia or not, but he's British, I think. Maybe. Is he British? He's British.
Yeah.
He is. So I'll be very curious to see what he comes up with next, because
he's a talent for sure.
A definite talent. And fortunately, I guess it's representation's improving in Hollywood.
Yeah.
For all the right reasons, it's a good time to be a person of color who is extraordinarily talented and makes successful films.
Yeah. And he is just looking at his next credit for director. It's a documentary called The Occupied City. It's a documentary about Amsterdam under Nazi occupation during World War II. So it seems like he, much like director of Last Thing, Jordan Peele, he's got a message that he wants to put forward and present. What's the matter, Archimedes? Shut up.
Archimedes disagrees.
Shut up. So yeah, I think that he is someone who he's kind of cut his teeth on like Mark Romanek style kind of. He's done a lot of short films and music videos, and now he's kind of cherry picking a couple of projects here and there. Apparently Steve McQueen has been really keen on getting the story of Solomon Northup out there, and it was a great opportunity for him. There's some interesting talents growing and coming through.
I just don't see enough of anymore. He is a talented director, and he still largely works in music videos.
Yeah.
So, that's another story, but I am a big fan of Mark Romanek. He needs to get more work, Hollywood. But I would be curious to see that documentary. It's an odd choice for an Academy Award winning motion picture director to be making a documentary about Amsterdam during the war. I mean, I can see making a film about it, right? Like, cast Brad Pitt and George Clooney in it and have spies and shit. Like, everybody wants to see fucking that, but like, documentary, no one sees them except me.
Well, to be fair, Martin Scorsese, Oscar winner, he directed the Rolling Stones doco.
He did. He started out. He directed the Woodstock documentary.
Yeah, interesting choice. But we're going off on a tangent, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, but I would say I think I can see your criticism of the film. I think they're valid. It's not a perfect thing, but I think it's still pretty good.
Oh no, don't get me wrong. This is a great film. This is a really, really strong film, and I think it's an important film to watch. But I also, there's just that part of me is like, I would have liked it to be that little bit more in depth, because it's a fascinating story and I want to know more of it. And I just felt like it suffered from that typical kind of biography thing we talked about before, where it's like not quite enough time spent, so things feel a bit rushed or jumping from one spot to another. It's like, come on, I was really enjoying that element. I wanted to kind of experience more of that, and it was just the standard issue with doing this kind of movie, which I can't really be a critic for because I have not done it.
No, but there's no reason why we can't be Monday morning quarterbacks and you sort of pick.
We are armchair producers.
Could you have, instead of being slaves, could they have been race car drivers? And instead of slaves, could they have been
fighting a giant mechanical spider?
Could they have maybe cast The Rock in it and Vin Diesel? And could we have just made this Fast and Furious 12? Could we have done that? Could they have gone back in time to the 1850s? Could we do that? I think we could. They save an excellent space. We're going to pick something new. I think it's my turn.
It is your turn. It is your turn.
And I'm going to take a fairly obvious choice. There were so many to pick from. I was super, super tempted to follow Scoot McNairy to Dawn of Justice, but I don't want to have to watch that again. You'd enjoy that too much.
I would enjoy it.
And I was tempted just so I could go back and watch the director's cut because people say that improved it. And I am curious because we've got Justice League, the Snyder Cut coming out next year.
Mm-hmm. And we've got Wonder Woman coming out Christmas Day.
And apparently reviews are in, and apparently it's all right.
Mm-hmm. Where are you taking us next, Travis?
I am going to follow, however, not Scoot McNairy, but Steve McQueen, the director. And I'm going to go with his most recent feature film, Widows.
Oh, okay.
I haven't seen it. I'm picking things I haven't seen here, and apparently it's very good. It's that's what I've heard.
Okay, all
right.
Let's
have a look. On Metacritic.
Viola Davis, Michelle Rodriguez, Elizabeth Debicki, Liam Neeson.
It does also have Robert Duvall, Colin Farrell. There are plenty of places you can take us.
Yeah, there's some talent in this one, isn't there? Goodness me. Oh, it's based off a screenplay by Gillian Flynn. Okay. Gillian Flynn, most recently, she was the writer behind Gone Girl,
which I liked. So, look, it's got a 6.9 on IMDb. It's his audience score, I guess you'd say. The Metascore of 84 says as the critics liked it a lot more. It had a big rap. It's a female-centric cast. And everyone apparently thinks we're misogynists because we didn't like Ghostbusters. I have had people tell me that.
Really?
You're one of those handmaiden men because you didn't like Ghostbusters. I'm like, sorry. Comedies are supposed to have jokes. But that's another story. If you're guys ranting about Ghostbusters, there's plenty of back episodes you can do that in. But this is supposed to be good. So maybe one way to find out.
The blurb from 20th Century Fox is 4 women with nothing in common except a debt left behind by their dead husband's criminal activities take fate into their own hands and conspire to forge a future on their own terms.
Kind of reminds me of the plot reminds me of the Kitchen.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Sandra Bullock film that came out last year. Sandra Bullock.
Melissa McCartney as well?
Yeah, it was Melissa McCarthy. No, not Tiffany Haddish and Melissa McCarthy. I saw that on a cruise ship. And it wasn't good. It was not good at all. So that's the wives of New York gangsters in Hell's Kitchen in the 70s continue to operate their husbands' rackets after they're locked up in prison.
Mm.
And it's a DC film, so they're going to be in the Snyder Cut as well.
Don't say bad things.
So no, it's similar to the standing plot, but apparently this one's good.
Cool. All right. Well, I look forward to that for next week's show.
and I'm sure it'll be hopefully on one of the. It's on Prime.
Yes.
If you're in Australia, and you can rent it in all the places.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of Prime, I did spot a little thing from Amazon Prime. They are going to be the ones over here streaming The Stand, January 15th, I think
January?
it is.
I'm not going to wait till January. It premieres next week in the States. I'm watching it.
Well, that's because you are one of those criminal types that I hear about on the news.
I don't think I'm a criminal. I pay for your service. I expect to watch it when it airs in the States. And if someone decides to sit on it, well, that's their problem, not mine.
Mm-hmm. No,
it premieres tomorrow in the States.
Yep.
And you better believe I am so psyched to see this.
I am looking forward to it. My hopes are high. My hopes are high. It looks good. The trailer looks good. Let's hope it.
The reviews that have crept out have been positive.
Okay, good to know. Good to know.
I haven't read many of them, but I just sort of read the synopsis and go, it's good.
It's good. All right. Now,
what else have you been up to in the last fortnight? You've been bumming around on your couch,
getting a beer belly.
Pretty much.
So I decided to try and go a bit of an unusual route. Last year, Lupita Nyong'o was the headline star of a comedy horror sci-fi, according to IMDb, movie called Little Monsters that co-starred Josh Gad, Alexander England, Kat Stewart, and no one else that I really know of. And it's a washed-up musician teams up with a teacher and a kids' show personality to protect young children from a sudden outbreak of zombies. I thought, oh, okay. There's a lot of things in there that tick a few boxes for me.
Friend, where are you watching this?
This is on Prime Video. And I started watching it, and Alexander England is deplorable. He's horrible. He's a terrible person. And for the first, I think, maybe 5 or 6 minutes solid, it is nothing but him arguing with his girlfriend. Just all over the place. It's a montage series of them just constantly arguing. Boom, 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 boom. You intercut with some moments of him busking on the street, getting told to move along by the police, and he looks like he's a complete and utter waster. And it's not until maybe 10 minutes into it that Lupita's character makes an appearance, and that was when I clocked off because it was just awful. It was absolutely awful. Alexander England is just an utterly... I don't know if he's fucking brilliant at being a horrible, entirely unlikable guy, or if it's just that bad. I couldn't get through it. And as soon as Lupita came in, it's like, okay, sorry, no. I just there's not been a single funny bit in this yet. It's just insulting my time and my ears. And yeah, so it was. I do not recommend watching it because it was in the first 10 minutes. There was not a joke. There was an attempt at a joke, and it was not funny. Come on. I don't know. It's not that difficult to make a comedy horror movie with zombies in it. And
I would say no. I would agree.
Yeah. I just don't understand. Like, you look at one of the gold standards for zombie comedy, Shaun of the Dead. That's got a guy who is a slacker. He is minimum effort, constantly. He's still generally a likable guy, but you kind of go, okay, I can see why she's breaking up with him, and I can see that. But there's still comedy throughout it, and it's crass. There's elements of it that are crass. Like Nick's character just goes, "Can I get any of you cunts another drink?" I was like, "Yep, that's it." And they it looks like they kind of try to do something along those lines in Little Monsters, but it just doesn't work. It's not funny. The energy is not there. It just feels like a terrible knockoff, and it just kept on making me think, I wish I was watching the Fred Savage Little Monsters instead, because that's Howie Mandel, possibly at his best, in my opinion. Fred Savage, it's a great little
This
little
is not
number.
an encouraging review, and unfortunately, the writer and director is an Australian.
Yeah, Alexander England has got one of those very, very overt Australian accents.
I don't even know who he is.
Yeah, it's just so garish. You know, there are some voices, I'm sure that there are people out there who are like, yeah, like yours, that are just annoying to listen to. His is really bad. His is really bad.
Oh, okay. He's been in a few different things. He was in, yeah, okay. I still don't know who he is, but he was in Gods of Egypt, so he picks his projects pretty well.
Alien Covenant.
It's all quality all the time.
Yeah.
He was in Offspring, which is a very popular Australian soap opera.
Yeah. I think there was maybe 30 seconds of Josh Gad with his TV personality on the TV, and it was quintessential TV personality on TV, played by someone who's actually kind of funny. But I didn't get a chance to actually see his character in the world of Little Monsters, so I don't know how good he is in it or how bad. I don't know anything about Lupita's. It was just this 10-minute onslaught of Alexander England. It's like, no, just no, absolutely not.
Pass on.
Yeah, that is a very hard pass unless you really, really want to not like yourself for an hour and a half or however long.
You didn't even mention how awful he must have been, because he's Josh Gad.
I kind of find Josh Gad funny in certain times, in small doses. Like he can be funny as like like the other guy. If it's heavy on Josh Gad, no. It's one of the things that I liked about the American version of the Book of Mormon. You know, it's all geared, kind of looking as like, oh, it's Elder Price is the main character, but Josh Gad's character is a subsequent, and he does really well at that. When you get more Josh Gad, that's usually instantly too much Josh Gad.
He's not to my taste, but
yeah. So that was my my short thing that I watched. The other thing that I actually watched all the way through was Illumination's adaptation of The Grinch, and this is currently on Netflix. Illumination are the people behind Despicable Me, the Minions movies.
Not the Jim Carrey one, to be clear.
Correct. This is voiced by Benedict Cumberbatch. But you don't really hear his voice too often. He's putting more of a general American accent on. And as Shay repeatedly pointed out, it diverts from the classic Grinch story quite a lot and puts a lot of things in, and he's a much more likable Grinch, all things considered. But all in all, it's not bad. If you've got kids, or if you want something on whilst to entertain the kids at a Christmas party that you're having or something like that, it is absolutely fine. It has got some jokes in it that are okay. There's nothing. It's certainly not like a Disney quality thing. It's not even Illumination at their best when they're like doing Despicable Me 2 or something, which isn't exactly a high bar. This is entirely safe Hollywood animated movie fare, much like their adaptation of the Lorax, and I think they were the ones who did Sing and Minions and The Secret Life of Pets. They are very middling. but it's great for kids. Absolutely great for kids.
Why did you watch it then?
Well, getting to the real Christmas movie that I watched, and it is arguably the best Christmas movie. Arguably, it could be shared with Scrooged. This is the Muppets Christmas Carol.
I thought you were going to say Die Hard.
No, although that is
Muppets Die Hard, I would watch.
Oh my god, that would be amazing.
Who would play Alan Rickman? Would it be Sam the Eagle?
That would be fantastic. Yes.
Kermit would be, now I have a machine gun. Ho, ho, ho. Yippee-ki-yay, motherfucker.
I would suggest bringing some sulfurs in here because otherwise it's going to get pretty bad for the woman who's pregnant.
This would be great. I don't know. Maybe I don't know. Yeah, so you gotta get that casting right. But there we go. Someone will do that.
Someone should do it. And I know exactly who would probably want to do it. It would be a combination of Jason Segel from who did the Muppet movie a few years ago, and because of the Die Hard element, it would be the guy that I've been kind of obsessed with for the last few shows, Andy Samberg. He loves Die Hard. The comedy would pair nicely between Die Hard and Muppets. I think they could actually do something quite good.
I would just love it if maybe Baker was the chauffeur in the car or something like that. I forget the character's name, but yeah, it just works. You can do anything with a Muppets and it would be funny, frankly. But I think Die Hard Muppets would be great.
Mm.
Anyway, so Muppet Christmas Carol.
Muppet Christmas Carol. This was done in 1992, and I think it was the last movie that Jim Henson had any involvement in before he died. It's maybe not. I don't know. It's directed by his son, Brian Henson, and it co-stars Michael Caine as Scrooge, because obviously the Muppets are the stars. It is wonderful. And it was one of those movies that I always watched growing up as a kid around Christmas time. And it's one of my mum's favorite movies. And there's just subtle early CGI work in it that is still good today. It's looking dated, but it's still subtle, intelligent use of it. The fact that they have all the Muppets in it, they use a lot of real sets, real sequences. It means that this has got that quintessential Muppets look. And it's timeless. All of the characters are wonderful. It is heartfelt. It is really sad. It is brilliant seeing Miss Piggy as Mrs. Cratchit and being this typical, come here, Kermie, and just want to fight everyone. And then having these moments where she's actually really sad and it's like, Miss Piggy's making me cry. Stop this.
I'm not supposed to feel emotions.
Yeah, they're a puppet, damn it. But they make me feel things that make me feel awkward. It's just really, really well done. It takes a couple of liberties with the Christmas Carol story. Of course it does. It's fucking Muppets. But it does it in a nice, heartfelt way that it is in keeping with the rest of the story and keeping it with that kind of PG element. There are there's jokes in it that are that I like to think of the Pixar kind of level where it's kid funny, but then further you look into it, you're like, oh, that's actually really dark comedy.
Full of winks and nods at the audience, going, you know what I mean?
Exactly, and it's just one of those great Christmas movies that you can't help but sing along to the songs when you know them, and I know them, and they've been in my head all the last week and a half since I watched it. It's Muppets. You can't say bad things about Muppets. I'm sorry, you can't. It's just not allowed.
I think this might be the last great Muppets movie ever made. I'm sorry, I didn't like the modern reboot that Jason Segel did, and that the guy from the Flight of the Conchords won the Oscar for the song. Maybe it's just because I'm older now, and they just don't really appeal to me on the level that it did a little bit back in when I was still young enough to really kind of
Feel things.
Yeah, but before I was dead inside. So but like, I didn't enjoy that, but I know a lot of people did. So, and I'm glad for young folks they're still making these types of films for them to enjoy. But
my sadness for the Muppets movies is the fact that Disney owns them, and I just don't really like giving Disney my money anymore.
And they like own a lot of things.
Yeah.
Like, you think back now and you kind of go, I remember when they bought Star Wars, we were all like, this doesn't feel like a good thing. And like, there you go, Star Wars. But like, they did pretty well for Marvel films. So they were all pretty hopeful about that. And then, what was that, 10 years ago or so? Now you're like, oh, didn't go well. But they're still doing well on the Marvel front. So,
and you know what that actually gives us, because I've been ripping through a few things. My last little talking point before I shut up and Travis actually has intelligent things to talk about is obviously over the last week and a half, we had Disney just bombard every social media channel with all of their movies and TV shows and things like that that are going to be coming to Disney Plus. And my God, are they determined to bury Star Wars into the ground? My God, that's so much Star Wars.
Yeah, they don't. I just kind of like, with The Mandalorian, I haven't been watching season 2 because I don't have Disney Plus. And I don't really want to pay for it. Maybe I'll get it for a week or something on a free trial when the season 2 is finished and smash it and then cancel because I don't want to pay for it. But I think The Mandalorian is doing great things. Everybody keeps saying that this new season's good. And it's kind of the saving grace of Star Wars at the moment.
Yeah.
But we had the Leslie Headland show, which everybody knew was coming. And I'm conflicted on this because I really liked Russian Doll. I thought that was great. But also, this is coming from the Kathleen Kennedy side. It's like Game of Thrones at fucking Lucasfilm. And the Kathleen Kennedy side, I don't think really likes the his name, the guy who's doing The Mandalorian, Jon Favreau side of things. They don't necessarily see eye to eye from what I hear.
Yeah.
And anything coming out of the Kathleen Kennedy side of Star Wars right now has an instant question mark next to it, and he considered very suspicious because she was responsible for the god-awful sequel trilogy, which, depending on who you talk to, Disney are trying to find a way to bury and reboot. And in fact, she did this apparently without actual word on the street. She did it without consulting Disney management. She just went out and gave an announced that Headland was doing this, and apparently Disney management weren't too clean on that. And now we've got the Patty Jenkins film, I think, the Rogue. Yeah,
the Rogue Squadron thing. Yeah,
like, I guess apparently you've still got the Obi-Wan show coming.
Yep.
Ewan McGregor's involved, so I'm quietly interested in that. But you're right. It's like, did you not learn anything last time? Have you not learned? I think one of the things that made Star Wars special was that wasn't much of it.
Yeah, it was piecemeal bits that we got through, but they were top quality. And I still think, like, going back to my playthrough of Star Wars Fallen Order, Jedi Fallen Order, I haven't gone back to that at all because it was so middling, so average. Respawn Entertainment did a much better game with Titanfall 2, using similar mechanics that were just more fun in that game. And it's like, okay, I get why people would say this is amazing, because comparatively to what we've been getting, yeah, it is. But that bar was so low. And I haven't watched much more of The Mandalorian since I think I've watched like 3 or 4 episodes of the first season. Like, okay, they're just not making this for me anymore.
I think it's worth finishing season 1 because it is good. And each episode is different. For better, for worse, they've gone off and they've tried to do something different with every episode, which I liked. Yeah, there's a prison break episode, there's the samurai episode, there's a gangster. Like, each episode has a different feel to it, which keeps it fresh. So I would encourage you at some point to go back and try and struggle through the rest of the season because there's good stuff in there. But you're right. Who are they making these films for?
I think the obvious answer to that is just how big it went on social media when Rosario Dawson, spoilers, ladies and gentlemen, cameoed as Ahsoka, who is one of the most beloved characters from the animated show Star Wars Civil War, I think it is. And that's a character I don't really know fuck all about, but it's clear that's who they're making this for. The generation who grew up with the Clone Wars. That's it, Clone Wars. And it's like, okay, yep, that's the generation divide, I guess. That's yep, that doesn't include me.
How good that was.
I heard that it was really good, and I watched, I think, the first season. It's like, okay, this isn't bad. I don't really like the animation style, but the story's okay. But even then, it's like, it's still Anakin, and Ahsoka in season 1 is quite annoying, and that was purposefully designed, and then they change it for the later seasons and stuff, and she becomes a really, really interesting character. But that's a lot of content for me to fight through to get to the good stuff. Okay, they're obviously, they're just not making it for me. That's fine. That's fine. There's a lot of talent involved. I don't know who they're making it.
Yeah, there's a lot of talent involved in the sequel trilogy. Rian Johnson's an incredible writer-director. It was exactly the wrong place for him to be. Oscar Isaac's a fantastic actor. I think he was given zero to do with the character after The Force Awakens. Daisy Ridley, I think, is wonderful, actually. And she got ridden into the ground, and unfortunately for her, I don't know if she's going to recover from that exactly. It's full of great, Donald Gleason. I think he's actually very good in a lot of things, and he wasn't given a lot to do, and his arc was pathetic.
The key thing is no one was really given much to do.
This is true. It was exactly, and you can have all the talent in the world, and if you don't have the writers on board, John Boyega, I think, is the biggest tragedy of all. I think he's an amazing actor, and I was so excited to see what happened to Finn after The Force Awakens. And as you said, no one was given any real actual arc or anything to do. So, it was tragic, and I don't care how much talent's involved in their new shit. I think anything that comes with Kathleen Kennedy's name on it, out of her, it's all going to have her name on it. But anything with her imprimatur, anything that came out of her wing of Lucasfilm has to be incredibly suspect, because she's an activist.
She's not got a good track record.
She's not a good track record. I feel like she's. Since Lucas left, I don't want to be. It's interesting now that there's this revisionist movement for the prequels. Like, they really weren't that bad.
Yeah, they were.
No, they were. But Disney just sort of said we can do worse. So I think she has this activist streak in her that these films need to have this woke angle weaved into them to a degree. And no, I'm not saying because they've got women they're necessarily woke. Absolutely not. I just said Daisy Ridley was great. Really excited to see what they did with Rey.
There is nothing wrong with having those messages and things like that, but they've got to be delivered well. Otherwise, they feel fucking terrible, and it makes the movie bad. It makes the message bad.
It needs to be skillfully woven into. If you're making a space opera, it doesn't exactly fit quickly, nicely. You have your woke politics in there. Like, fine, you want to send a message in a Star Wars film? I think that's great. That takes in a lot of talent. And I'm sorry, J.J. Abrams is not a message filmmaker.
He makes blockbusters.
Blockbusters. I don't know that Ryan is either. Maybe you might know better than me if he's sticking messages and stuff. But
he makes entertaining movies.
Maybe. You know who, fucking get Spike Lee. Get Spike Lee. He does message films great. Who wouldn't want to see a Spike Lee Star Wars movie? I would fucking
see. Now that leads me to my other point of this whole Disney Plus dump. They've put a lot of stuff on there, and there's a lot of shows on there that I'm sure that there are people kind of going, "Oh, I can't believe they're not doing a movie of that," or "Why is there?" Because there are some movies being released on Disney Plus. Like, why isn't that getting a cinema release? And this happened in the same fortnight that Warner Brothers got raked over the coals because they're dumping all of their 2021 movies simultaneously on HBO Max. And part of me understands why they did that, because they're still not sure how often, how much of cinema is going to be open, and they've invested all this money. They're trying to get it into a failing streaming service. It is not a good streaming service, HBO Max. It has not got enough content on it, and this is them trying to recover. They should have had conversations with the directors and people involved in these movies before dumping it on there, but why is it okay on one side, not okay on the other? That's my thing here. And I think it's just because one of them is called Disney.
I guess it's because the stuff that I'm assuming is stuff that's going into Disney Plus was made for Disney Plus.
But come on, I'm sure wouldn't be that. If we hadn't have had COVID, I'm sure that if the Ahsoka thing is a movie, that would have been in, because Rosario Dawson is an established actress. She's not the biggest star in Hollywood, but she is a established, good quality actress, and
I'm assuming, though, that this is a fairly recent idea to make this series.
I genuinely don't know.
I'm assuming. I haven't read a whole lot about it, because I genuinely don't give a shit about any of the Star Wars news I read anymore. I just don't care. I'll watch it when it comes out because I'm curious, but I have zero expectations. I'm assuming it's fairly recent news. I'm guessing they actually, when they went to someone like the producers of this product, they said, we're going to make it for Disney Plus. If it was greenlit at any point in the last 6 months, there had to be a conversation that it was going straight to streaming. Whereas, the Patty Jenkinses of the world, that thing's been sitting in the can for probably the better part of a year now. So they could rightly say, hey, I had no idea I made this for cinemas. I mean, I know Nolan's piping up about it, but his film kind of caused this because no one went and saw it. Yeah. That's not necessarily his fault, but it is his fault that it's not good to watch.
Yeah.
But I look, honestly, precious filmmakers. There's an argument this will be the death of cinema. I don't believe that. I mean, in the States, it could be a blow to cinema. Cinema might take a long time to recover. I don't think that at-home streaming is a substitute, personally, for no matter. I don't have a great setup here, but I mean, it's sitting in the dark with strangers is a special experience, and I don't think any home setup can possibly replicate that.
It's exactly it's the same argument as people who still listen to vinyl records and things like that. That it becomes a boutique experience that people pay premium money for to get that. We're probably going to. I feel like cinema screens are going to either become more that exclusive deluxe package where they've got the reclining seats and the seat service, and maybe they're going to try and push for it's better quality food and drink that we're offering so that we can charge more of a premium to cover the cost because we're not showing as much, or we're not putting as many people into the screens because we don't want empty screens. It's going to evolve. There will be cinema houses that will shut down because there are so many, and
I think it's more to it than I think you're right. I think the boutique offering. I mean, we've kind of seen that here already.
Yeah,
and we get the lousy. I mean, I would not pay extra for. We've talked before about the lousy quality of things you buy at Gold Class and La Premiere here in Australia with the big chains. But I assume they're offering something similar in the States. But it's an event. It's a going out thing. Like we've talked about it before. Like when you roll up at the movies and you see the 3-hour Blade Runner remake, or the 90-minute Fast and Furious 722, you're going to go, like that's when people, they go on dates to movies. They go with friends to movies. It's a social thing in a way.
Yeah.
It's a going out thing. So I think it's going to survive, but I think you're right. It will be harder. Cinemas in the States in particular will close because they're being fucking stupid about this whole thing and they won't, wear masks and things. I'm sorry, American friends. Do stay safe, but you're some very silly people sharing the country with you. It's going to be, we've talked about it before on the show here about the lack of product, how that's going to flow through to the Australian market. Like, there's going to be a whole lot of direct showing at Australian cinemas over the next year.
Oh, it's not just, but that's the thing, is not even, not just the cinemas that are going to be doing lots of reruns of old movies and those cheap tacky movies that previously would not have got a cinema release. They are going to be picked up. But streaming services as well, we're already feeling that effect. So like, oh, I want something new to watch, but nothing's been released. Nothing's new. The Stand is kind of the biggest new thing coming out. And they still haven't got worldwide day one distribution, which is insane to me. It's because streaming is not a new thing anymore.
It's dumb, and they just keep doing it here. Like, I just keep doing it, and like I said, I'm not going to wait. It's going to be pirated to hell and back.
Yeah.
And I don't understand. I do not understand why they're doing it, other than maybe I don't know who's producing it in the States. Like, they didn't want to pay extra. Maybe it costs extra to do day one streaming in Australia, which completely dilutes it. But I mean, like, I guess it's probably a fair chunk of people who will be, unlike me, who aren't sitting there gagging for watch it, who'll just go, oh, The Stand, Stephen King, I know that, and they'll watch it because we'll be all on holidays in January.
Yeah. Well, some people will. I'll be back to work.
Yeah, a lot of Australians take I used to drive 90 minutes to work every day. January was glorious because the vast majority of Australians seem to take a lot of leave in January, and a 90-minute trip took 60 in January.
Nice.
So I think that's my scientific measurement of how many people that's in January. Was it like, this is glorious, but it's gonna end soon. So I'm with you. I don't understand why they do it now. I mean, day one cinema releases is a slightly different thing, but it's on a streaming service. As soon as it's on a streaming service overseas, and it's going straight to streaming overseas, it'll be online within an hour of finishing. So
exactly.
Why would you not let me? I've paid for your service. We do our very best to watch everything legally. But if you ask me to wait a month for a show I've been gagging for years, you're not doing it. Sorry, change your business model.
Yeah, I genuinely don't understand the business mode of it. It was like, oh, the American syndications that they need 30 days of exclusivity or whatever. It's like, why? It's a different market. It's the other side of the world. You have a different contract for those. It's gonna get fucking copied and pirated wherever you put it out. So what does it matter? It does not matter.
It doesn't make any sense to me why you'd wait a full month for something so high profile.
Yeah,
it's going to be all over social media. Well, I don't get it. There'll be at least 2 or 3. That means we're going to be 2 or 3 episodes behind the States.
Yeah,
it doesn't make sense. I mean, if it was maybe on Foxtel first, then coming to Prime a week or 2 later, that would be odd. But maybe that might make a little bit more sense. It's a big deal for Foxtel. Our main cable service to do it, but I'm just going to completely subvert the whole thing and I'll torrent it. Sorry, I paid for 4 services. Yeah, 4 Hollywood. That's enough. You get your money. Don't make me wait a month.
Yeah, absolutely right. Now we have deviated from more than enough there. Travis, what have you been filling your time with?
Well, I got a couple of things to talk about, and I actually was telling you at the start of the show, I actually was quite proud of myself last week. For a change, I had stuff to talk about. Watching things. And then over the last week, I've promptly forgotten most of it. But that's how memorable they were. But I have been watching the first couple episodes of a new series that's being heavily advertised in Australia. It is a Showtime series overseas. It's being shown on Stan here in Australia. It is Your Honor, whose main the main star of the show is Bryan Cranston, who was in a little show a few years ago you might have heard of, called Seinfeld. That's right. He played the dentist.
Yeah, and he was in Godzilla too.
He was in Godzilla. Let them fight. So, what is Your Honor? Bryan Cranston stars as a judge confronting his convictions when his son is involved in a hit and run and embroils an organized crime family. He faces impossible choices and discovers how far a father will go to save his son's life. So, this show opens with his son, played by Hunter Doohan, who is quite pathetic, actually, a character. He's effectively pathetic. Visiting the place of his mother's death, is chased by some kids in cars, and in doing so, runs over the character of the son of the biggest organized crime family in New Orleans. Carlo Baxter, a character's name he is played by Jimmy Stanton. No idea who that is. And he watches him die on the side of a road. And rather than calling 911, which he does, but doesn't actually say anything to him, rather than telling him where they are and getting an ambulance, he just gets in his car and drives off.
Okay.
So that's the setup. That's spoilers here, people. It's the first 10 minutes of the fucking show.
Mm-hmm.
We are separately introduced to Bryan Cranston's Michael Desiato. So Hunter Doohan plays his son, Adam Desiato. Michael Desiato is a judge in New Orleans, and he's kind of the cool judge. Like, we sort of see him actually questioning witnesses and leaving, I don't know what they call it, the big stand thing that they sit on, and walking around the courtroom a little bit and talking to witnesses and the defendant. And he's cool because he picks up that the defendant, while probably guilty, hasn't really done anything that wrong. And if they put her away, her kids won't be able to, eat, yada, yada, yada. So this is all very early on. I'm not giving a lot away. This is not an important scene. But he sort of tried to build him up as the cool judge who doesn't take things too seriously, who's not like too hard on people, and understands people's problems. I found that a little cheesy personally.
Okay.
Because that's not how judges are. Look, I'm not an expert in US law. God knows I've told the story to people who know me about somebody I know who was involved with the law last year. And I subsequently found out a lot about everything I knew about the legal system in Australia was based on law and order, none of which applies here. So I don't know exactly what judges do, but I don't think they do that. It does get stronger, though. So the basic setup is that Bryan Cranston finds out what his son has done, and then says, "No, we've got to hand ourselves in. You've got to hand you in. You've got to admit what you've done and take your licks." While he's at the police station about to get his son to surrender himself and confess to what he's done, he notices that he finds out essentially in a unique way who the kid he hit was. At that point, he finds out the kid is the son of Jimmy and Gina Baxter. Jimmy played by Michael Stuhlbarg. Gina Baxter played by Hope Davis, who is somebody who I do recognize.
Yep.
Your face. She was in American Splendor. She was in Captain America Civil War. She was in About Schmidt. Wayward Pines is another one. Anyway, he finds out that this kid is the son of, essentially the local Al Capone.
Yeah.
And basically pussies out at that point in time, makes the sort of the risk-reward decision at that point in time that if he has his son hand himself into the police and admit that he killed this kid, his son's essentially going to be killed. His son is dead anyway at the hand of Jimmy Baxter.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the setup, and that's most of our first episode. This is quite brutal in parts. I mean, it can be quite gruesome, especially in the hit-run scene. The second episode strengthens the show a little bit, which is interesting. Quite often we talked a while ago about Lovecraft Country, where I thought the pilot was extraordinarily strong and it went downhill from there. This one here, I feel like the second episode's a bit of a step up, and we now enter the realm of Michael trying to clean up, shall we say, the evidence remaining of what Adam has done. And it starts to get more complicated as more people are dragged into the web of deceit that Michael is starting to weave in trying to protect his son.
Okay.
I don't want to give too much away because it is actually quite interesting where the story goes in the second episode. And you start to sort of see, but if he does this and that happens to him and then he'll do this and then that'll come back to him, and you'd be like, you can start to see this web. At times, though, it's almost comical. It's not played for laughs, but like you could almost, if you change the music and put a laugh track beneath it, it could almost be a comedy of errors. It'd be like, uh-oh. If you just changed it up a little bit, but it's not played for laughs. But I found myself going, if this were a British show, it might have been a comedy.
Yeah.
Dark comedy, For Americans don't do dark comedy quite so well.
No.
So it's good. It's not perfect. It basically is leaning. I tell you what, I hope Bryan Cranston has a good chiropractor.
Oh, really?
He must have had a sore back from carrying his show. Seriously, it's all about him. It's just like, okay, we've signed Bryan Cranston to do this fucking thing. we don't need any other names or faces. It's just going to be Brian's going to carry us. And it's all on his charisma and just Bryan Cranston being Bryan Cranston. He's probably not a world away from Walter White here in the sense that he's playing such a law-abiding, normal character who now has to, step into the underbelly, if that makes sense, right? The underbelly of world of crime. But I guess this character has a few more connections to that than Walter White did and understands it a little better. But he's still very much a fish out of water in this world.
Okay.
It's good. It's good enough. I mean, I'm not saying if you don't have Stan, sign up to watch it. But if you have Stan, I would recommend watching an episode or two. Check it out. It might be worth your time. I'm curious to see where the show goes next. Unfortunately, it's one of those bloody annoying shows that they release one episode a week. I don't know what it's a Showtime thing, I guess. I don't know.
They're doing it to spread it out because I haven't got anything else.
I guess so, and it's also there are pros and cons, right? And the pro is it stretches it out for me as well, which means I'll probably be watching it for the next month and a half.
Yeah.
Whereas if they dumped it all at once, I probably would have watched it all at once.
Yeah.
So yeah, Your Honor, pretty good.
Pretty good. Okay.
It's okay. It's all right. It's good enough. You took Bryan Cranston out and put in, I don't know, Tony Danza. I don't know, somebody. That would be interesting. I don't know. If anyone of a lesser actor than Bryan Cranston in that central role, this might actually struggle a little bit. But I mean, like I said, he's a giant of an actor.
Yeah. Yeah, he's a talent. He's a talent.
I mean, we know what he can do.
Exactly.
So,
all right.
It appeals to my. I wish there was more Breaking Bad instincts.
Did you ever get around to watching El Camino?
I liked it. Yes, I did. I watched it when I came back from holiday last year. I thought it was pretty good. It wasn't amazing, but I liked what it was. If it was it's a little bit like I said, it's basically a direct injection into your arm of more Breaking Bad, and I mean, I liked the character of Jesse. I mean, we spent 7 seasons with Jesse. I mean, certainly he's probably not the character that Walter was. Walter was probably the more interesting character, being a protagonist and antagonist at the same time. But Jesse was still an interesting character, and while I could have definitely lived with the final scene with him driving off into the night and that being enough for me, I enjoyed seeing what happened to him. It wasn't bad. Jesse Plemons is a wonderful actor too. Very underrated.
Okay. Cool. What else?
I had the pleasure of watching a very different kind of film for me in the weekend. I had a film. This is not something that happens often for me. I had a film chosen for me. I went to visit a friend and we had dinner, and they said, let's watch a movie. And I was like, okay. And I was a little bit like, I don't know what I'm going to get here. No, I thought really hard about this, and I chose A Simple Favour.
A Simple Favour. Okay.
Now, if they'd known me a little better, they probably wouldn't have chosen this film. Probably because of the director. The director and I, we have history. He hurt me in a really, really deep personal place. The director of this film is Paul Feig. The Paul Feig. This same Paul Feig who directed the 2016 Ghostbusters reboot. We covered that. I think it's needless to say, we didn't like it.
Yep.
And I lost the bet. That is a film that caused me to sit through the sing-along version of Grease. And Paul Feig is directly fucking responsible for that. Paul.
It is his fault.
It is to a fault. He wrote that. So, Stephanie is a single mother with a parenting vlog who befriends Emily, a secretive upper-class woman who was a child at the same elementary school. When Emily goes missing, Stephanie takes it upon herself to investigate. This is back, unfortunately, to say I didn't hate this. This is actually decent. Okay. This is back in the space where Paul Feig plays fairly comfortably. The ironic thing about him is I actually quite liked some of his earlier films. I thought Bridesmaids was funny. I thought Spy was funny, despite the fact it sounded awful. I thought it sounded good. It worked. He needs to stick to this kind of thing a little bit more. So we have Anna Kendrick playing Stephanie in this film, and we have Blake Lively playing Emily. The other main character in this being Henry Golding, who plays Sean, who is Emily's husband.
Oh, yep.
Not a really well-known actor, Henry Golding, but he's in this quite a bit. He's in Crazy Rich Asians. He's in the So you'd be like, I've seen that guy in stuff, but I'm not sure where. He was decent in this as well. So we have Anna Kendrick, who is a fairly mousy, introverted, put-upon single mother who makes these cooking vlogs, generally speaking. She doesn't have a lot of friends. She's not widely accepted by the other parents at the school. She's kind of an overachiever who volunteers for every possible job at the school, Christmas product play or whatever it is. She's kind of one of those annoying people. She meets Blake Lively's character, Emily, as it sort of says, through their sons want to go for a play date. And, at Emily's house, Emily has a very, very posh house. She lives with Sean, who is a doctor of some description. We never really quite learn what Blake does. It's kind of mysterious. She gets very angry when photos of her are taken. And so it kind of sets up this mystery. And very early, about a third of the way through the film, she disappears. And Stephanie uses her vlog as a medium to talk about the fact that her very good friend has disappeared. And to sort of start, the film sort of goes from being I don't know what you call it, sort of like a lightweight comedy into very much a detective story at that point.
Okay.
And Stephanie starts to build a relationship with Sean, and they sort of work together to try and figure out what's happened to Emily. And as I sort of said, it becomes very much a detective story at that point in time. And the mystery sort of deepens. It's almost almost an Agatha Christie-esque point. Not that good, obviously. But something you'd expect to see on Inspector Morse or something like that, Double Lives and so on and so forth go into it. But the thing is that it's light and fluffy, and it doesn't overstay its welcome.
It's good.
It does what it does well. I think Anna Kendrick is fun. One of the things that I enjoyed about this is when we see her filming her vlogs, we actually see it as if we were watching the vlog online. It's not like watching the camera film her. We are watching it with like the comments bar at the bottom and the bar on the side of the screen of her previous videos and the number of people watching and subscribers and stuff like that. There are little subtle nice things, like there are like 45 subscribers at the start. By the end, there's like hundreds of thousands and stuff like that. And you can see the comments sort of refreshing at the bottom of the screen, people saying things, and you can see what the videos she's made recently. There are little Easter eggs all the way through those little vlogs, and I enjoyed that. That was a nice touch. And you can also, Anna Kendrick really plays the character well in the sense you get a real sense of her growth in confidence as the film progresses, and she becomes almost a bigger person in her hunt for Blake Lively's Emily. Blake Lively is Blake Lively. She's tall, good-looking, and elegant, and a bit mysterious. So that's about all she needs to be. Her costuming choices are interesting. Apparently, we're inspired by Paul Feig's costume. His outfits.
Oh, yes, that's right. Because that's his kind of trademark, isn't it? Yeah.
And so she has these crazy outfits. She's very interesting outfits she's wearing. So I don't often talk about costuming on the show, but it was noticeable. That it was a very unusual but interesting look. It looked like her characters had. It is, like I said, it doesn't stay as welcome. It is what it is. It's there. It's gone. It's an hour 57, which is maybe a bit longer than one would like it to be. But I didn't feel, as I said, it overstayed its welcome. I think if you liked Feig's other work, you're probably going to enjoy this one. It's nothing you're gonna forget it the minute you walk away from it. But I was pleasantly surprised to go in to see a film I never knew existed, and it was all right.
Okay,
that's effusive praise at its best, right there.
Well, we have been nothing but raving greatness. 12 Years a Slave, yeah, it was good, but Beatty. The Little Monsters is awful. The Grinch is okay. The Muppets Christmas Carol is great. It's Muppets. Disney, Your Honor, it's good for Bryan Cranston. A simple favour. Yeah, it's all right.
I would actually recommend this to you if you were looking one night for something for you and Shay to watch and you can't agree. Watch this.
Okay.
I think you'll find it inoffensive. I think Shay will find it charming.
Okay.
It's on Stan. It's on Stan, so it is available legally in Australia.
Yep.
And yeah, if you're just looking for something to have on in the background while you're texting, I think this is as good as anything.
Okay, cool. Now, I was going to say that we have some early thoughts on Cyberpunk and Immortals, but I'm actually getting exhausted and I've got to go to work.
I'll give you a 2-sentence update on Cyberpunk. So give me a little bit more time to play it. I'll say this much. I have a 7-year-old X-Bone out the back there.
Yep.
I've had no bugs. None to speak of it. Really nothing that I've noticed. But I will say this, it looks like shit on the X-Bone. I've seen graphics on people with nice PCs. The reason I bought it on X-Bone is I don't think this computer would handle it. This is 4 years old. I don't think it would handle these has the specs to handle it properly.
It's the Stickman version.
So I thought, well, it'll definitely work on console. We give it it really is disappointing how it looks. Like it just really, I mean, you can start to feel like this could be good. It probably will be good once they fix it. But like I would say GTA 5 looks better.
Wow.
GTA 5 been out for what, 7-8 years?
Well, that's a point of the kind of optimization for, GTA 5 has been optimized and re-optimized, and it's an impressive bit of design. There's always going to be those kind of buggy, glitchy issues with those kind of cross-console games. We've seen it from PS3 to PS4. Now we're seeing it from PS4 to PS5 and the Xbox generations of that as well. But at the same time, this game has been in development for the PS4 and for the Xbox One for a long time. I don't know why it's performing so bad, unless it's just simply kind of like what happens with a lot of the Switch games, where it's like, oh yeah, we can get this running on Switch. It's like, yeah, you can, but should you?
It said we were, so we've got to. Maybe they bit off more than they can chew, but I'll come back next week maybe with a little bit more of an in-depth on it or the actual gameplay. Like, I just wanted to say, look, if you are looking to play it, I'm playing it on a very old Xbox. It's running. I'm not getting any frame drops. I'm not getting any game-breaking glitches. Just put up with the fact that it doesn't look that great.
There you go. Squint your eyes.
I started playing games with, 286s, or any old Atari 2600, square moving around the screen, I really have nothing to complain about.
I remember when Link's Awakening came out and I looked at that and went, look at those graphics.
NBA Jam came out, you're like, wow, look at those digitized pictures of players,
I have a very vivid memory of playing GoldenEye on N64. I was going, wow, they actually look like Pierce Brosnan. Like, no, they don't. They really don't.
It goes to show your standards do go up a little bit, but unfortunately, I think if they promised the world, they haven't quite delivered. They're handling the situation reasonably well at this point in time. I'm hearing different people say maybe 3 to 6 months might be when it's before it really is actually properly finished, which is disappointing. But it's okay.
Yeah, I kind of wonder if this is arguably the highest profile game to come out multi-platform since Red Dead 2.
I would think that Red Dead's another game that looks better than this. I think you're probably right.
I'm wondering if perhaps it's like they kind of got through halfway through production and went, oh, you know what? This should just be on the new consoles because they're the ones that actually have the power to actually make it look good and run pretty much how we want it to. And Microsoft and Sony just kind of went, yeah, but we don't have enough consoles for those new ones to make it worthwhile. Please keep bringing it to these current consoles.
Hey, look, maybe it would have been a fair reason I should have bought the new consoles, but I guess that's not really a
well,
problem.
no one can buy them.
Well, that's it. I mean, people have bought them anyway. The PlayStation 5, we've said before, at least that's got games. The Xbox Series X doesn't have anything at the moment. It needs no reason to buy it. I don't know why people are buying it.
There's no reason to buy any of them yet. And, you know, there was a few shipments and no one's going to get anything until like April or something. So it's kind of Nintendo are going to clean up because it's going to be the only console that people can buy.
Yeah, exactly. And they're releasing, new games for it.
Yeah.
Anyway, you are a tired man. We need you to get healing so we can get you
bring on whatever life throws at me next.
Exactly. It'll be a curveball for sure. That's what it's good at. There's another
make it a nice one. Make it
15
a nice
days
one.
to 2020 to go. So don't take your eye off the ball. But we'll be back next week and we'll be talking about widows, which would be interesting. Because I don't know a lot about this, so I'm curious.
Me neither. And we will both have. I will be talking a little bit more about Ubisoft's Immortals: Phoenix Rising. I think is the full title. That's playing that on Switch. So far, enjoyable. I'm sure Travis will have some more Cyberpunk, and
whatever else catches our attention in the next week. We will have him. I will almost certainly be able to talk about The Stand because that premieres in the States in a couple of days.
Yes. I would like you to actually get around to watching Palm Springs as well. And give me your thoughts on that.
If I have time, I will try. I'm doing things. I'm going places.
Yeah, you're a busy man. I understand that. I appreciate you fitting me into the timetable every week.
There's the new films I'm doing. So
On that note, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for listening on podcast services, which the last 2 episodes are up. Finally, I actually managed to get my computer to do what it's supposed to do. Hopefully in the new year, I'll be able to actually buy a new computer and get that a little bit better. Until next time,